lakh stray dogs out of Delhi and the National Capital Region has completely divided this issue. It's become the most divisive, most polarizing issue. On the one side are ardent pet lovers who are saying that this is an inhumane way of treating animals. They're on the one hand, they're very vocal, they are very passionate about treatment of animals. On the other side are the victims of stray dog bites, who of course are also passionate but not as vocal. They've been badly affected by stray dog bites, but they can't seem to be putting out their point of view in as passionate or articulate or loud and vocal way like the animal lovers are. This is playing itself out the most in society, residents groups, WhatsApp groups, where it's completely divided up residents and societies. No one wants to take all dogs and consign them away in some plot, hundreds of kilometers away from the city center. Maybe the court's directive is also impractical. How can you in a city like Delhi just chain away 10 lakh dogs and consign them to some random field or random plot kilometers away from the city center? Maybe it's even an inhumane way of dealing with this problem. But there is also the other side, and like I said, that side is the side of the victims. Kids as young as 2 and 3 years old who've been bitten, have been mauled by these stray dogs, by these street dogs. There have been more than 30 lakh such instances of dog bites in the year 2024 alone. Who gives them voice? Who hears their side of the story? And how humane is that for these young kids to be mauled by these stray dogs and no one sort of presents their case? Yes, the Supreme Court went over and above its brief. The Supreme Court, took suo motu cognizance of this matter, but it has now laid down the directive for the Municipal Corporation of Delhi, for the NDMC, for other civic bodies that control Delhi. In 8 weeks' time, all street dogs in Delhi have to be removed from the National Capital Region and have to be given shelter elsewhere. Let's debate this tonight here on CNN News 18 on Brass Tacks, but I want to first bring you up to speed with passionate voices from both sides. Animal lovers who are saying that this is absolutely cruelty that's on display at the behest of the Supreme Court. On the other hand, there are those victims who have suffered at the hands of these stray dogs who are saying this is a decision whose time had already come. Let's listen into some passionate voices, and there are some big questions that we need to ask as well.
देखिए, जो रीज़न लिया है उसके अगेंस्ट कुछ करना चाहिए, कार्रवाई होनी चाहिए, क्योंकि हम लोग काफ़ी टाइम से पूरे ब्लॉक में सब लोग परेशान हैं। हमारी बिल्डिंग में भी एक कुत्ता हफ्ते 10 दिन से आके रह रहा है। किसी का पेट है, किसने पट्टा बांधा हुआ है, लेकिन वो क्या है, जो भी बच्चे वहाँ के उनको काटना चालू कर दिया उसने।
हम लोग कंप्लेन भी किए, उसके बाद कोई कार्रवाई नहीं हुई और अभी भी मेरे घर में बैठा हुआ है और उसको अगर थोड़ा बहुत हटाते हैं फिर आग बैठ जाते, भौंकने लगता है।
बैठे रहते हैं हर वक्त, शाम को भी दिन में भी जी भौंकते रहते हैं। जब बच्चे खेलते हैं फुटबॉल वगैरह, उसके भी दो बच्चों को भी काट खाया ना, वो लेगी उसकी माता।
So I want to present to you some statistics. You heard from a few of the victims who were bitten by dogs or whose family members were bitten by these stray dogs. Just hard numbers that I want to share with you tonight. Look at the number of dog bite cases. In 2018, there were 75,67,811 dog attacks. 75 lakhs. In 2019, more than 72,77,000 dog bites. That's the following year in 2019. 2020, of course, was the COVID year, so it had substantially fallen because for much of that year, the country was in a lockdown. So it came down to 46,33,000 dog attacks in the year 2020. In 2021, it further fell down to 17,01,100. Again, it was partially a COVID year, so you would expect the numbers to fall. So it had fallen over those 2 years, in 2020 and in 2021. Then in 2022, it started going back up because life had returned to normal. So from 17 lakh, it went up to 22,89,900 dog attacks. In 2023, it went further up. It's gone up to 30,52,521 dog attacks. And in 2024, ladies and gentlemen, India saw 37,15,113 dog attacks. So we're basically back to thereabouts at the COVID level or the pre-COVID level as far as dog attacks are concerned. And that is a very, very serious matter of concern. So much so, the Supreme Court raised this matter. Now, if you look at the number of rabies deaths, so how much of this is fatal? Well, the numbers of fatalities is also on the rise. For example, in 2022, there were 21 rabies deaths that were reported across India. In 2023, that number went up to 50. And then in 2024, that number further went up to 54. 54 people died because of rabies attacks that were infestations of dog maulings or dog attacks on these individuals. 54 deaths, perfectly preventable deaths, happened in the year 2024 because of rabies. Now, was the Supreme Court order a solution to this? Could there have been a better, more humane way of dealing with this? Let's look at what is the system that was in place. A system that was put in place, by the way, and endorsed by the Supreme Court in some of its previous judgments. It's called the ABC model, Animal Birth Control Model. Clearly, that model failed because inherently there was deep flaws and a certain unworkable nature in that ABC formula. There was improper implementation of the sterilization policy. That led to a proliferation of stray dogs. Local bodies whose job it was to take out these dogs, neuter them, sterilize them, and then bring them back to their natural habitats, they simply failed. They failed on sterilization. They failed. I mean, the statistics are there. The dog bites have increased. The rabies cases have increased. The stats prove that those municipal corporations failed. Activists are arguing that Delhi has 10 lakh stray dogs. You cannot just make all of them up and leave. You cannot just, capture all of them and put them in a shelter far away from the city. And the SC's order is impractical and it is unfeasible. Activists also argue that the SC order ignores sterilization and immunization solutions, which it had put in place some years ago. If you look at world examples, most countries also rely on sterilization and immunization. But clearly in India's case, and certainly in the case of the national capital, that has not worked. The dog population has gone through the roof because of improper sterilization and neutering. All right, in case you want to join us on this issue and post your thoughts, talk about it on either side, whether you're an animal lover or whether you're on the opposite side of this divide. We're opening up our call lines. You can call us on the number that's flashing on your screen. Is the Supreme Court order unfair or is it justified? 0120-640-3751. I'm going to say that number again. It's 0120-640-3751. Call us on the number. Share your views. I want to first go across to a couple of callers before we go to our first set of guests. Sandeep Singh is calling us from Punjab. Yes, Mr. Sandeep Singh, go ahead. Yes, Mr. Sandeep Singh, go ahead. All right, I don't think Mr. Sandeep Singh can hear me. Can we go to the second caller, Mr. Ajit, who's calling us from Bangalore? Mr. Ajit?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Mr. Ajit. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I welcome the Supreme Court judgment. So I have been a victim of dog bite myself, and I was very lucky that I got away with a very, very minor dog bite. Okay, so I welcome this, and I'm a pet lover too. But now I am a little bit scared of dogs. Actually, I cannot go out of my apartment also because there are at least 30 dogs in the vicinity. So it's really scary. You want to send the
So you welcome the order. Thank you, Mr. Ajit. Mr. Vijay Kumar is our next caller. He's calling us from Mumbai. Mr. Vijay Kumar, yes, good evening.
Good evening to you. What I have to say is I fully agree with the Supreme Court order. These dogs should be sterilized. If you cannot do it all at one time, keep doing it, say 2,000, 5,000 dogs every month. Put a sticker on them that they've been sterilized. So your staff next time when he catches them, just sterilize them and leave them on the road. Probably in a year or so, you'll get rid of this problem. My wife has been bitten twice and she had to undergo those 5 injections. It was so difficult to find the injection. We spent money on that. And these people who love these dogs, let them take some into their houses.
I mean, the dog lovers should come out and start adopting these indies. Let me go across to Mr. Venkat Raman from Coimbatore. Mr. Venkat Raman.
Good evening, sir. This is a very wonderful order. It is acceptable to everyone because these protesters, they travel by car. Common people are affected. Supreme Court order is very fine. It should be implemented.
Okay, thank you for that. I think that's a great point too. The people who are affected are the poorer sections of society who have to walk or take two-wheelers. They're the ones who are affected more than the animal lovers who strut around in their cars. I want to go across to one more caller before we go to our first guest tonight. Rohit is calling us from Hyderabad. Yes, Rohit, go ahead.
Yeah, so it's an excellent order, excellent step taken by Supreme Court. and it should be followed throughout the country. And there are also many dog bites here in Hyderabad as well. So whoever is opposing this particular order, they have to maintain those dogs and see that even if anybody is bitten also, they should take the
Okay.
responsibility of the same.
All right, Rohit, thank you for your call. So we've got 4 or 5 callers, all of whom saying that this is a good order. We welcome this order. Clearly, they're all victims of these dog bites or dog attacks, or know someone who's been affected by a dog attack. I want to go across to someone who raised this issue, politically speaking. One of the first members of Parliament to raise this issue is Congress Member of Parliament Karti Chidambaram. I spoke to him. Our society literally seems to have split India. There are dog lovers on the one side, and there are people who've been affected because of the menace of stray dogs. One person who seems to be on the other side of that divide is Karti Chidambaram, Member of Parliament from Tamil Nadu. Thank you very much, Karti, for speaking with us. You've been tweeting about it. You've been talking about this issue for a number of years, much before yesterday's Supreme Court order. Today, a lot of people are coming out and saying that it's inhumane. The court has gone above its brief, and this is not the way to treat dogs, etc. What would you say to them?
I'm glad that there is a public debate right now, because people have not been paying attention to the serious health and safety issue for a number of years. The Supreme Court judgment could have been drastic, but it's really galvanized people from all spectrums to air their views, and I hope that this churn will lead to some sort of consensus on how we are going to deal with this health and safety issue. At no point of time have I ever suggested that the lives of dogs must be jeopardized or they should be treated in an unfair manner. But no country in the world, no developed country in the world has dogs in a free roaming state in the streets. Dogs have to be vaccinated, neutered, and they must be housed in private homes or in shelters. We can't have dogs roaming in a free roaming state. That being said, I understand it will take time for us to achieve this. If there are better methods other than what the Supreme Court has suggested, it's really up to those subject matter experts to come up with solutions which is acceptable to all and which are practical. But the end result must be, we can't have free roaming state dogs in the streets of India. We can't have unvaccinated dogs, and we can't have unneutered dogs.
No, so the court, I think a couple of years ago, had come out with this whole ABC formula, which is basically you neuter, you sterilize, and then you put these dogs back to their home conditions, wherever their natural habitats were, which is the streets and so on and so forth. And yesterday's order, many are saying, and this is what animal rights activists are saying, goes against that 2023 order of the Supreme Court. Why not look at, and this is what they're saying, I have a different view on this, but this is what Peter and other folks are saying. The more humane alternative is to neuter these dogs, vaccinate them, sterilize them, and put them back in the habitats where they grew.
These ABC rules have been in vogue for a long time, but they have hardly been implemented, because the onus of implementing them has been on the local bodies. And local bodies don't have the wherewithal, the resources, the manpower or the expertise to implement them. The Supreme Court's order is only a reaction to a failed ABC policy. If the ABC policy had lived up to its expectations and had been rolled out properly, perhaps we wouldn't have reached this situation. But the ABC policy has failed. And even if you want to implement the ABC policy, you need to give resources to the local bodies. You need to do capacity building. You need to also have shelters, because you can't neuter dogs and let them out immediately. You need to house them for 5 days. Even in that case, you need shelters. So even to implement ABC rules, there is no local body which has got the infrastructure to implement the ABC rules. And secondly, this is not some urban problem alone. This is a nationwide problem. And the people who are affected the most are the poor and the ones who are walking and who are going on two-wheelers. Those people who live in gated communities and who are going in cars are hardly affected by the health and safety issue of of dogs roaming in the streets of India.
But tell me, Karti, what about the logistics? This order applies to Delhi and to the National Capital Region, where I believe some accounts suggest there are as many as 10 lakh dogs. Where are you going to take them? Where are you going to house them?
I don't know. That's really up to the municipality to come up. Maybe the municipality must go back to the court and say that this is what we are capable of doing, and all those others who have very strong views about it must also step in. This is not a problem of only the government. This is a problem for the society. So society, I'm not necessarily the repository of all knowledge in this subject. All I'm saying is that we can't have this problem. Somebody needs to address this problem. It is affecting people. So we need to sort this problem out. If there is an ethical, scientific, humane way, a better way than what the Supreme Court has suggested, I mean, let's come up to that consensus. But glad that this is being debated now. This wouldn't have been debated had this judgment not come.
Okay.
If this judgment had not come, it would have been business as usual. Nothing would have, nobody would have, even you wouldn't be interviewing me, people wouldn't be getting agitated, people won't be stepping out. I mean, now, if anything the Supreme Court has achieved, it has triggered a debate which will hopefully lead to some sort of consensus.
So one final word, do you think perhaps a better alternative would be all the dog lovers who are coming out, and I believe there's going to be a big protest at India Gate, 4 p.m. today, these folks come out and adopt more indies or more stray dogs?
I think we should encourage adoption. See, there can't be any dog without a collar roaming in the streets. There can't be a dog which is unvaccinated roaming in the streets. There can't be a dog which is not neutered roaming in the streets. So, if the animal lovers, which I respect them greatly, have a better solution, let them come up with that solution and file a review in the Supreme Court and ask the Supreme Court to modify their order. It's possible and implementable order. See, this is not a problem which only the Supreme Court can solve or even the local authorities can solve. It has to be a concerted effort of all stakeholders, and I'm glad that all stakeholders have been triggered and are now stepping up to say what they feel, and hopefully this will lead to some sort of clarity and an implementable strategy. But let's not go back to the ABC rules, because the ABC rules have completely failed. There is while they framed the rules, no resources or wherewithal was given to the local authorities to implement them.
All right.
And local authorities are not just urban cities, it is throughout India.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much for joining us and sort of shining the light on this issue, so much so the Supreme Court took up this matter yesterday and has passed that order. That order, of course, welcomed by a large number of people, and also animal lovers are taking grave issue with it. All right, we did a survey. CNN News 18 got a survey commission done by Brand Pulse Global. We asked a bunch of questions and the answers are quite revealing. The first question we asked was, do you agree with the Supreme Court's ruling on stray dogs? Two-thirds, more than two-thirds, 68% have said, yes, we agree with the Supreme Court's ruling. A quarter, a little under a quarter, 23% saying, no, we don't agree. 9% saying, maybe, maybe not. The second question that we asked, do you think that stray dogs are a menace? Again, thereabouts, almost two-thirds, 62% saying, yes, stray dogs are a menace. A little over a quarter, 26% saying that no, they're not a menace, and 12% saying, we don't know, maybe, maybe not. Number 3, we asked them, do you think your streets are safer without stray dogs? Again, a good number, 56% saying, yes, our streets are safer without stray dogs. It's more than half. Just about 30%, a little less than 30% saying that no, the streets are not safer if you take the dogs out. Can a municipal body, and it is their job, the municipal corporation, the municipal body, the municipality, it's their job to deal with these strays. Can they do more to deal with the strays? Again, there's a big majority, 62% saying yes, they can do more. What it is, we will try and find out. 17% saying no, this is only so much that municipalities or municipal corporations can do. And number 5, should policymakers find a more empathetic solution? And this is where a lot of people are criticizing the Supreme Court order as well, saying it's inhumane, it's unempathetic. Yes, 66% are saying there should be a more empathetic solution. 15% saying no, there cannot be a more empathetic solution. What is that empathetic solution? Well, if you look at different global examples, let's try and put some global examples about how countries deal with the problem, the menace of stray dogs. In Portugal, there is nationwide sterilization and vaccination, which is done in a humane way. There are multiple drives through the course of the year. There are also adoption incentives. There are tax breaks, for example, given to people who adopt a stray. In the Netherlands, which has managed to achieve zero stray status without killing a single dog. So that is, again, a global example that is there. There is mass sterilization, mass vaccination, and microchipping. So every dog has a chip attached behind his ear, and there are strict breeding laws as well in the Netherlands. So that's another country that's achieved zero stray status, and there is heavy fines for those who abandon their dogs. Let's also not forget, there are pet lovers who abandon their dogs for whatever reason. There are heavy fines in the Netherlands for anybody who abandons their dog. In Turkey, stray dogs are vaccinated, they are neutered, and then they are sent back to their natural habitat. They're released back into their territories. They're given food and shelter stations across various cities, but they're neutered and vaccinated and then sent back. And then you have in Chile, for example, there are mobile veterinary units. It gives them free spay, neuter services, both in rural and in urban areas. It makes prevention accessible to all. In Italy, for example, regional laws forbid the killing of strays. They're in fact housed inside municipal shelters until somebody comes out and adopts. So this is what we have as far as the global examples are concerned. I want to go across to an animal lover. Samyukta Hornad is an actress and an animal rights activist. We had a lot of callers, Samyukta, just before you joined us. Every one of them said this is a good order. We welcome this order. What would you say to them, particularly people whose family members have been affected by stray dog attacks and stray dog bites, or in some cases even toddlers, children have been attacked by stray dogs? What would you say to them?
There's definitely a conflict here between everyone who has experienced a dog bite and the animal activists and the dogs itself. The conflict is real because the administration, the ABC policy, the BBMP, the system itself failed. I completely agree that there is a problem and we need a solution for it. But the solution that the court has found right now is completely inhumane. It's unscientific. It is also discompassionate for the animals. They failed to do their job, and shifting 6 lakh to about 10 lakh dogs to a shelter actually increases the problem. The dogs are going to become more aggressive. The number of diseases are going to increase. Plague can happen. They're going to feed on waste. So the solution is what most people have a problem with. Of course, there's a problem. If they had implemented ABC correctly, 40% of the dog population would have reduced by now. They didn't do their job. And so what we're putting the animals through is what the problem is. Of course...
No. So no one is saying that, there can be a better or more humane, more compassionate way to do this. But the problem is the only solution that everybody seems to have is the ABC formula, which has clearly failed. And I agree, it's not the court's fault, it's not animal lovers' fault that the ABC policy failed. The buck has to stop with the municipalities. But that formula did not work. Is there any other solution that you have whereby this problem of strays can be addressed?
I run a foundation called Prana Animal Foundation, and I have been trying to talk to the system government for years now, saying what is that we can do. There is a solution, but the solution has to be done by everyone in every zone for it to actually work. Because if you start sterilizing dogs in one area and don't do it to the other side, the population still increases. And there's another thing also, the dog lovers who love to feed are not socially responsible feeders. So if you want to feed the dog in your road, you have to sterilize, vaccinate, make sure you're not feeding outside residential area where elderly people go for a walk or kids are roaming around. I think what is happening is it's two complete extremes. People are not understanding that they have to be responsible for the dogs they're feeding. And if you feed today, you've got to feed tomorrow and in the same place. You can't just feed today because I feel like
on the question of feeding, I'll give you a personal example. In the place where I stay, there are designated feeding spots. I mean, there was a huge clash between animal lovers on the one side and others were saying, this is getting too dangerous. They went all the way up to the district magistrate, and the district magistrate passed an order. This is an order of the DM of the place that I stay in, saying that there are designated feeding points and you have to feed the animals only in those designated feeding points. None of the people who feed at those points. So
that is irresponsible behavior, and they are the ones, the dog lovers themselves, who've caused this issue as well. What is the disincentive, or how does one punish someone who does not feed these animals at the designated feeding points? I think we have to fine them. You have to make sure that there is a fine, and see what the court is doing right now. Even relocating the dogs are completely illegal. According to ABC 2023, it doesn't follow these rules. But poor animals are going through the trauma of this decision because the lovers, dog lovers, feeders, I mean, people who have been bitten, everyone's against them right now, right? Like, I feel that if everyone was a little more cautious, careful, this wouldn't have happened. But now that this has happened, the solution is to really make sure that you don't just dump all the dogs in one place. It doesn't change anything. This has happened in Jaipur, in multiple places before, and it's only made them more aggressive because dogs are very, very territorial. You put them together, they're going to fight. There's going to be more diseases, more infections, more mating, more dogs, because none of them
So
are
how
sterilized.
would you, for example, I know it's a Supreme Court order and there have been Supreme Court orders in the past that, have been reviewed, or somebody's asked for a revision petition asking the court to modify its order. If tomorrow you were to make a case before the court that, look, instead of doing what the court has prescribed, for whatever reasons you just mentioned, this is what needs to be done, what would that be? What would that prescription be?
Immediate sterilization of dogs in your area. Like, there are zones, like in Bangalore right now, for every zone, there's 15 lakhs allotted for that particular zone to sterilize dogs. You're supposed to sterilize about 1,000 dogs in a month. Implement it somehow, monitor it, make sure it's actually happened. Okay? And you can give it to small different hospitals and centers. You can't put everything together in one spot, right? So if everyone takes up the responsibility of their area, sterilizes 5 dogs, also promote adoption, spread awareness about the diseases. When a dog attacks a kid, kids are supposed to be educated to know. I mean, they're young. I understand they'll run. But, there are multiple ways you can educate kids about how to.
But what should they do? What should kids or elderly people, who I think are the most who are vulnerable to dog attacks, what should they do when a dog attacks you?
So actually what happens is, when there are a group of dogs who are very hungry or aggressive, first thing kids or elderly people do is run, right? That is what causes them to just attack, right? That is not supposed to be done. Or you just calm down, and dogs can sense fear, right? I mean, also parents should not let young kids just walk around like that, especially if it is a space like this. It is scary. I myself don't go out at night because I have dogs outside. You don't know how they'll react. So you've got to be careful, but please don't run. Don't attack. Don't throw things at them. So these are things that have to be taught at every apartment community and to kids at school, maybe,
Okay,
but,
Samyukta, we'll leave it at that. Let's see if the court is approached by animal lovers. Some of them have been talking about it. Maneka Gandhi has been talking about it, that they will ask for a revision of the court's order. But ultimately, it boils down to, there has to be a solution. There has to be a solution to this problem. It's been going on for far too long. And it's really a pity that the court had to take this up. The court is not an administrative body. It's not the job of the court to be telling municipalities how to manage the street dog problem. But the problem got so out of hand, including inside the Supreme Court premises, by the way. That's why the court took up this matter suo motu. It happened inside the court premises. Today it's put out a circular as well, particularly dealing with garbage and waste food. In garbage dumps, for example, which are left open, the stray dogs are actually coming there for the food. And the court has now put out a circular saying, at least in the Supreme Court premises, to have covered all the garbage bins, all the garbage dumps, etc. That is another problem where municipalities have failed. It's because of garbage dumps all around residential areas, commercial areas, that the dogs have flourished, have festered, because they're coming searching for their food. All right, we'll leave it at that. US President Donald Trump has claimed that tariffs on India for buying Russian oil have delivered a big blow to Moscow's economy. In his latest remarks ahead of the meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin, which is going to happen in Alaska on Friday, President Trump called New Delhi one of Russia's largest or second largest buyers of oil. Last week, President Trump doubled India's tariffs to 50%, and the reason he did that was that he said India was, like I said, one of the largest purchasers of Russian oil. Trump imposed the 50% tariff on India in 2 phases. There was a 25% tariff that was first announced on the 30th of July. That's reciprocal tariffs. And then there was an additional 25% that was announced on 7th of August for buying Russian oil. This is what Trump said at the White House.
Tremendous potential in Russia to do well. They're not doing well. Their economy is not doing well right now because It's been very well disturbed by this. It doesn't help when the President of the United States tells their largest or second largest oil buyer that we're putting a 50% tariff on you if you buy oil from Russia. That was a big blow.
So that's Trump's claim. Let's now deep dive and tell you if India is the only country that's buying from Russia or whether other countries too are buying from Russia, whether it's coal, petrol, petroleum products, whatever it is. Let's start with coal. From December of 2022 until the end of June this year, China purchased 44%, almost half of all of Russia's coal exports. India's was less than half of that at just 19%. Turkey procured 11% of Russian coal and South Korea 9%, Taiwan 4%. That's the top 5 buyers of Russia's coal. Crude oil, and that's why the sanctions or the tariffs have been imposed. China, surprisingly, is the largest buyer of Russian crude oil. China bought 47% of Russia's crude exports, followed by India at 38%, the European Union at 6%, and Turkey at 6%. Refined oil products, it's not India or China, it's Turkey, which is the largest buyer. More than a quarter of Russian refined oil products have been bought by Turkey, and then that's been exported into the European Union, followed by China at 13% and Brazil at 12%. LNG, gas, and this is where the Trump tariffs and the sanctions, are really reeking of double standards, because this does not apply to LNG. The European Union was the largest buyer of Russian LNG. More than 50% of Russia's LNG exports were bought by the European Union. Europe, which, preaches and waxes eloquent about how this money is funding Putin's war machine. 21% of Russian LNG exports bought by China and 18% by Japan, which is a military ally of the United States. When it comes to piped gas, again, it's the European Union, which is the largest buyer, purchasing 37% of Russia's piped gas, followed by China at 30% and Turkey at 27%. So it really reeks of double standards that India has been singled out for buying Russian crude, and India is not even the largest buyer of Russian crude. So what then is Trump hoping to achieve in this summit in Alaska when he meets President Putin later this week? Number one, he's going to try and test Putin's willingness for peace. Trump, in fact, calls the August 15 meeting in Alaska as a feel-out session. He wants to know within the first couple of minutes whether a deal is possible or not. Number two, he wants a swift ceasefire. His aim is to push Putin towards a ceasefire and stop the bloodshed. 3, he wants to explore some kind of land swaps for peace. Trump has floated the idea that Ukraine may have to give up a substantial portion of its territory in order to secure peace. That is something that Ukraine has rejected, and President Zelensky has said the constitution bars him from doing that. Also, impose pressure via sanctions. If the talks stall, then Trump has threatened there will be more secondary sanctions on buyers of Russian oil. Right now it's India. It could also be China next. Number 5, while the initial discussion will only be between Trump and Putin, he has left the door open for a future trilateral summit, which includes Zelensky of Ukraine. Now, on the other hand, what are Putin's objectives at this summit? Number 1, he wants to secure territorial legitimacy. Putin wants international recognition of Russia's control over Crimea, as well as Russia's control over the 4 Ukrainian oblasts, or the provinces, the regions in the east, which combine to be called the Donbass. Number 2, neutralize Ukraine's Western alignment. That's a key condition. He wants Ukraine to forever renounce any possible NATO membership or aspirations to membership, halt all military buildup, and declare neutrality. Also ensure that Ukraine does not host any Western troops. Number 3, consolidate Russia's gains on the ground. This is an opportunity for Putin to convert Russia's battlefield advances into a political settlement. Also, break the diplomatic isolation. For Putin being invited to negotiate directly with the US president, bypassing Ukraine, bypassing Europe, that serves as a diplomatic victory, a huge diplomatic victory. And number 5, alleviate the sanctions and recover frozen Russian assets. He wants Western sanctions to be removed. He wants frozen Russian assets, estimated to be something like $300 billion, to be unfrozen. So what can we expect in Alaska? And more importantly, what should India do now to respond to the Trump tariffs? I'm now joined by world-renowned economist Jeffrey Sachs. He's an economist with the Columbia University. Thank you very much, Professor Sachs, for speaking with us. I want to first start with the India question, because obviously there's a lot of interest around the Trump tariffs, the secondary tariffs on oil for purchasing Russian oil. Why do you think Trump has done that? Because India is not even the largest purchaser of Russian oil. Why is India getting punished?
Trump is not a very logical person and not a very strategic person. And so he does things impulsively. He thought that India would immediately agree to the demands that he made, that India would state, we will not buy Russian oil, and so forth. So this was a threat. India rightly did not succumb to the threat. It was not a well thought out strategy. Very little that Trump does is a well thought out strategy. What it has done, though, is to alert India to something that I've been saying for a long time, which is that India should not trust the United States as its main partner. India, of course, needs its independent foreign policy, and it should look with some care at statements and commitments by the United States. It was thought in India by some that India would become the close economic partner that would replace China's trade. I said that was naive. The United States is not going to accept large exports from India any more than it did from China. This is not my view of what the U.S. should do. It was my prediction of what the U.S. would do. So I warned against relying on the goodwill of the U.S. or thinking that India had some inside track on a good trade deal. I always thought that was an illusion. India also, at least some people thought, well, India should strategically align with the United States against China. I said that is absolutely the wrong approach. I am not a fan of the Quad. I'm not a fan of any idea that India looks to the U.S. In a security arrangement. It doesn't work. It won't work. And I think what Trump has done is to make clear, very clear, unfortunately clear, the points that I've been saying. The U.S. is not a reliable partner, especially under Trump, but I would say generally.
But Professor Sachs, I want to go back to the oil question, because if it is a question of principle, if there is even half an argument, logically speaking, that look, by purchasing Russian oil or Russian gas, you're funding Putin's war machine. Look at China. China is the largest purchaser of Russian oil in the last 2.5 years. China has purchased $158 billion of Russian crude. India, on the other hand, has purchased $119 billion of Russian crude. So if it's about punishing those countries that are enabling Putin's war machine, why hasn't Trump imposed the same sanctions or the same tariffs on China?
Well, he tried to punish China, and China retaliated immediately. And it cut off exports of rare earths and rare earth magnets and other components vital for U.S. industry. And the United States backed down. You used the word principle. If it's a matter of principle, you said. This is not a matter of principle. This is a matter of threats. This is a matter of bluffing. This is a matter of what Trump decides to do impulsively, what he thinks he can get away with, who he thinks he can scare into submission. So if you're looking for consistency, you're certainly looking in the wrong place. It's not going to come from the U.S.
Why do you think ties have soured? I mean, obviously, this is a relationship between India and the United States that's been built over successive U.S. administrations from George W. Bush for the last 20, 25 years. Trump has basically appended it. I mean, this is the lowest point in the relationship since perhaps Nixon and Indira Gandhi, and that was, God knows, 50 years ago. Why would Trump completely throw such a relationship under the bus, and what is it that India can do to deal with the fallout of this?
First of all, as I said, Trump is not a strategist. He's not a logical thinker. He's not a consistent, far-sighted thinker. American foreign policy right now is impulsive. It's short-term. It doesn't work. So this is a starting point. Second, Trump thinks that he has all the cards, or he pretends that he has all the cards, or he bluffs that he has all the cards vis-a-vis any other country. So he thinks that the great prize of the U.S. market, which is not so dominant, nor is it so important for India. It's helpful, but it's not so crucial. He thinks that that great prize gives him the leverage to make whatever demands he wants, even completely outlandish demands, say, of Brazil to stop a court case that's underway in a fully independent judiciary in Brazil. So don't look for long-term strategy. But if you want to know the underlying mood or motivation, the U.S. is flailing around because it's losing its dominance. And it's trying to reestablish its dominance. It's trying to reestablish fear. It wants India to be submissive to the U.S. It wants Russia to be submissive to the U.S. It wants China to be submissive to the U.S. It wants the BRICS to somehow go away. It's not going to happen. The world has changed. The world is multipolar. There are many great powers, Russia, India, China, the United States. There's not the U.S. alone. What should India do? India should be careful. India should align with the BRICS on the basic proposition that we are in a multipolar world, that no single country, and that means the United States, can boss other countries around. No single country should rearrange the international trading system on whims or threats coming from one person. Remember, in the United States, we don't even have a constitutional process underway for these tariffs. This is a one-person show, and he has no legal authority, no constitutional authority for this. We don't know whether our courts will stand up to him, but that's the truth. So India is doing the right thing. Prime Minister Modi spoke to President Lula. Prime Minister Modi is meeting with President Xi Jinping. Prime Minister Modi is meeting with President Putin. That's the right approach. That the BRICS say, wait a minute, we are not going to be bossed around by one country.
Do you also think, Professor Sachs, that the reason why Trump is in such a spiteful mood, if I can use that phrase, is because India's not given him credit for bringing about a ceasefire between India and Pakistan when there was this 4-day war that happened back in May, and Trump has been going on and on and on claiming credit for that ceasefire, bringing that war to an end. We saw the ceremony that happened last week in the White House with the leaders of Azerbaijan and Armenia, and he's going around saying he's stopped about half a dozen conflicts in the last 6 months. You think that's why he's being so spiteful?
Anything's possible. But if that is the truth, it just shows you how completely irrational the situation is right now. I don't discount it. It's possible. I can't get into that man's head. But what I can tell you is there is no strategy, there's no trustworthiness, there's no consistency, and there's no success from all of this flailing around.
Trump and Putin are meeting later this week in Alaska. This is the first face-to-face meeting that they'll have in the 6 months that Trump has been in office. He's been desperately asking for this meeting. Putin was sort of not really interested. What can we expect when both leaders meet in Alaska? Do you genuinely think that there will be, if not an end to the war, at least some kind of a temporary ceasefire?
I think that there will be an actual improvement in the relations between the two countries in some sense. Remember, these countries have a lot more at stake than the Ukraine war. They have at stake the diplomatic relations. They have at stake the rapidly collapsing nuclear arms control framework. They have economic issues, the removal of the sanctions, joint ventures, and so forth that would be mutually beneficial. And there is also the war in Ukraine. I doubt that this meeting would be called for Trump to try to lord it over Putin or to have a failed summit. But I think it's important to recognize that there are a number of things that can and will be discussed other than the war in Ukraine. As to the war in Ukraine, the United States should do one basic thing, and that is to say that NATO will not enlarge to Ukraine, and say it publicly, and say it clearly, because that is the reason why this war occurred, and that is the basis for ending the war. To say it requires going against the CIA and the deep state and the long-term anti-Russia strategy of the United States, but it's the truth. This war came from 30 years of the United States pushing its military right up against Russia's borders. And for the war to stop, the United States has to stop that provocation.
What about on the ground? Trump has been talking about land swaps and, you give away some part of Ukraine, you freeze the conflict, Putin gets to keep the eastern part, the Donbass. Zelensky says that's an absolute no-go. The Constitution bars him from doing so. What about on the ground? What will it take for Putin to stop this war?
Well, there are a few points. There are three areas of concern. One is Crimea. Crimea has been home to Russia's naval fleet in the Black Sea since 1783. When the U.S. helped to overthrow a neutral government in Ukraine in February 2014, which started this war, a U.S. joined coup. Immediately, the new post-coup regime said Russia should leave Crimea. Russia's never going to leave Crimea. That is the place of their naval fleet and naval power and ability to project power into the Eastern Mediterranean. And so Crimea is staying with Russia, no doubt. Then there is the Donbass, two oblasts, Lugansk and Donetsk. These are heavily ethnic Russian regions. They broke away after the February 2014 coup. Russia tried a treaty not based on annexation, but based on autonomy for these regions in 2015, 2016, called the Minsk II agreements. The U.S. blew up the Minsk II agreements. It told Ukraine, you don't have to implement them. That is why these oblasts are never going back to Ukraine as well. Then there are two oblasts, Zaporizhia and Kherson, where Russia's claim is much weaker. It came in November 2022. It's probably in part negotiable. This language of land swaps, by the way, is a bit absurd and misleading. Nobody knows what it means, but what it seems to mean is that Russia would give up some of its claim in Kherson and Zaporizhia, which is its claim, in return for receiving, in some sense, recognition of its claim in Lugansk and Donetsk. Right. There will have to be territorial changes. By the way, Ukraine will not accept them. That's their problem. The United States can accept them. These are negotiations between the U.S. and Russia. They are not negotiations between Ukraine and Russia. The U.S. should get out of this war. It started this war. It dragged Ukraine into it. Ukraine was not a completely innocent victim. It was a fool. I told the Ukrainians for years, the U.S. is going to bring you to disaster, just like the U.S. brought Vietnam to disaster, Afghanistan to disaster, and countless other countries. And the Ukrainians didn't believe me, but this is the situation. But the negotiations this Friday are between the U.S. and Russia, and they should be a way for the U.S. to extricate itself in a war that it didn't start. I'd advise Ukraine to get real also. I'd advise Europe to get real also. All this warmongering against a nuclear superpower is nuts. It's very dangerous, and it neglects all the history of how this conflict came about.
All right, Professor Jeffrey Sachs, it's always a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for joining us with your thoughts and perspective. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for tuning in to this edition of Brass Tacks, which came to you live from the CNN News 18 Primetime Studio, presented by Schneider Electric Smart Home Solutions.
CNN News 18 Town Hall, Mumbai edition. Focusing on India's financial engine. Decoding Mumbai's infra makeover. The Changemakers chart out their plans. Mumbai's Vision 2047, August 13. This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
भारत के राष्ट्रपति को माननीय इलाहाबाद उच्च न्यायालय के वर्तमान न्यायाधीश न्यायमूर्ति यशवंत वर्मा को न्यायाधीश जांच अधिनियम 1968 की धारा 3 के साथ भारत के संविधान के अनुच्छेद 124(4) के साथ पठित अनुच्छेद 217 और अनुच्छेद 218 के अंतर्गत उच्च न्यायालय के न्यायाधीश के पद से हटाने के लिए एक समावेदन प्रस्तुत करने का प्रस्ताव है। ये सदन संकल्प करता है कि इलाहाबाद उच्च न्यायालय के न्यायमूर्ति यशवंत वर्मा को उनके निम्नलिखित कदाचार के लिए पद से हटाने के लिए महामहिम राष्ट्रपति जी को एक समावेदन प्रस्तुत किया जाए। दिल्ली उच्च न्यायालय के तत्कालीन न्यायाधीश न्यायमूर्ति यशवंत वर्मा वर्तमान में इलाहाबाद उच्च न्यायालय के न्यायाधीश के सक्रिय और कब्जे में नई दिल्ली स्थित 30 तुगलक क्रिसेंट परिसर में आग लगने के कारण अस्पष्टीकृत नकदी की बरामदी के संबंध में भारत के सर्वोच्च न्यायालय द्वारा सार्वजनिक किया गया विवरण हमें 15 मार्च 2025 की सुबह 30 तुगलक क्रिसेंट नई दिल्ली से जली हुई नकदी धन मलबे को हटाने के संबंध में साक्ष की भी जानकारी है। हमने न्यायाधीश जांच अधिनियम 1968 के सामान्य प्रावधान और विशेष रूप से उसकी धारा 3 के प्रावधानों का अध्ययन किया है और हमें उनके बारे में परिचित कराया गया है। हमने न्यायाधीश जांच अधिनियम 1969 के प्रावधानों का भी अध्ययन किया है। हमें उनके बारे में भी परिचित कराया गया है। हमने सी रविचंद्र अय्यर बनाम न्यायमूर्ति A.M. भट्टाचार्य एवं अन्य 1995 5 SCC 457 केस में भारत के उच्चतम न्यायालय द्वारा घोषित कानूनों के साथ साथ अतिरिक्त जिला एवं सत्र न्यायाधीश X बनाम मध्य प्रदेश उच्च न्यायालय के मामले में दिए गए फैसलों से भी खुद को परिचित कर लिया है। 2015 4 SCC 91 और ये कि अतिरिक्त जिला एवं सत्र न्यायाधीश X सुप्रभा के मामले में उक्त निर्णय को सामान्यता और विशेष रूप से पैरा 33 को पढ़ने पर ये स्पष्ट है कि दिल्ली उच्च न्यायालय के मुख्य न्यायाधीश ने न्यायमूर्ति यशवंत वर्मा के विरुद्ध शिकायत को गंभीर प्रकृति का पाया और उक्त निर्णय के पैरा 33 के तहत परिकल्पित इन हाउस प्रक्रिया का पालन किया। यह भी स्पष्ट है कि भारत के तत्कालीन मुख्य न्यायाधीश ने इस गंभीर एवं चौंकाने वाले घटना और तथ्यों पर विचार करने के बाद और न्यायमूर्ति यशवंत वर्मा की प्रतिक्रिया तथा दिल्ली उच्च न्यायालय के मुख्य न्यायाधीश की टिप्पणियों को ध्यान में रखते हुए ये राय बनाई कि इस विषय पर गहन जांच आवश्यक है। इसलिए भारत के तत्कालीन मुख्य न्यायाधीश ने अतिरिक्त जिला एवं सत्र न्यायाधीश एस सुप्रा के मामले में निर्णय के पेरा 33(3) में परिकल्पना के अनुसार एक 3 सदस्यीय समिति का गठन किया गया। हमें यह भी याद है कि भारत के माननीय तत्कालीन मुख्य न्यायाधीश ने समिति की रिपोर्ट भारत के महामहिम राष्ट्रपति और भारत के माननीय प्रधानमंत्री को भेजी है। ये स्पष्ट है कि भारत के माननीय तत्कालीन मुख्य न्यायाधीश ने अतिरिक्त जिला एवं सत्र न्यायाधीश एस सुप्रा के मामले में फैसले के पेरा 33(7) के प्रावधानों के अनुसार कार्य किया है, जो स्पष्ट रूप से भारत के तत्कालीन मुख्य न्यायाधीश की राय को दर्शाता है कि पेरा 33(3) के तहत गठित समिति की रिपोर्ट में पाए गए आरोप इस प्रकृति के हैं कि उक्त न्यायाधीश को हटाने की कार्रवाई शुरू करने की आवश्यकता है। उपयुक्त तथ्यों के अवलोकन और सार्वजनिक रूप से उपलब्ध तथ्यों, न्यायमूर्ति यशवंत वर्मा के कब्जे वाले और उनके नियंत्रण में स्थित आधिकारिक परिसर से जली हुई नकदी की बरामदी और उसे हटाने से संबंधित परिस्थितियों की स्वतंत्र रूप से जांच करने के बाद हम स्वतंत्र रूप से ये भी पाते हैं कि भारत के संविधान के अनुच्छेद 124 के साथ पठित अनुच्छेद 217 और अनुच्छेद 218 के तहत हटाने की प्रक्रिया न्यायाधीश अधिनियम 1968 और उसके तहत बनाए गए नियमों के अनुसार शुरू की जानी चाहिए। वेदाक चरित्र और वित्तीय बौद्धिक ईमानदारी न्यायपालिका में एक आम आदमी द्वारा रखे गए विश्वास की नींव है, और यह भी कि वर्तमान मामले से जुड़े तथ्य जो कि भ्रष्टाचार की ओर इशारा करते हैं, वो भारत के संविधान के अनुच्छेद 124 के साथ अनुच्छेद 217 और अनुच्छेद 218 के तहत कार्रवाई और प्रक्रिया के योग्य हैं, और संसद को इस विषय पर एक स्वर में बोलना चाहिए और देश के प्रत्येक नागरिक को सार्वजनिक जीवन में भ्रष्टाचार के प्रति जीरो टॉलरेंस के अपने संकल्प के बारे में एक स्पष्ट संदेश भेजना चाहिए। अतः हम भारतीय संविधान के अनुच्छेद एक
Studio presented by Schneider Electric Smart Home Solutions.
Viewers, we are live from the CNN News 18 Primetime Studio presented by Schneider Electric Smart Home Solutions. Viewers, let's get straight to the point. I don't need to be telling you this because you probably already know and you've been debating this issue at home. But the Supreme Court has, viewers, over the last few days triggered a massive debate nationwide. Why is this, viewers? Because it has ordered the Delhi government and civic bodies to begin removing stray dogs from streets and housing them in shelters. And by doing so, it has sunk its legal canines into the stray dog